Alright, so in this video we are going to look at how to divide fractions with a whole number and how to divide a whole number with a fraction. Alright, now this process is a little bit strange. I'm going to show you guys the model and how to use a picture with it, but I'll be completely honest with you, I think it's actually easier to do the math because for me at least the models can get a little bit confusing in how they set up. So I'm going to show you both on the first couple of problems. But like I said, it's a little bit, for me anyway, it's a little bit strange. Okay, so here's what we are looking at. All right, so we're going to start with number 1 on the companion assignment, and number 1 is 3 divided by 1/3. So 3 divided by 1/3. Now, here's where people are going to get a little confused right off the bat. Is some people, and I'm going to write this in red because this is not correct. Some people, if they're not careful, will go 3 divided by 1/3. Hey, that's 1, right? No, that is not 1. All right. Let me show you with a picture what is actually happening here. So what's actually happening here is we've got 3. So I'm going to do this actually in squares. And that'll, well, that looks like a rectangle. I'm going to do this in squares, and that'll hopefully make it a little easier to see. My squares are just magically turning to rectangles every time. So we've got 3. We've got 3 holes here. And what we want to do is we want to separate, we want to divide the 3 holes by 1/3. So when we're dividing normally with a whole number, we're taking a group and separating it into multiple groups based on a whole number. Well, this is a little different because we're dividing it with a fraction. We're not dividing it with a whole number. So for my 3 and my 3 holes here, when I divide it by 1/3, I'm actually going to cut my holes into 3 pieces. All right, I'm dividing by 1/3, so I'm creating groups of 1/3, 1/3, which is, it's a little bit strange to think in your brain. I completely understand if you're going, wait, what? It's weird, but we're dividing our whole number into basically smaller pieces. So what's strange about this is we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're going to get 9 as our answer for this. Now I know some of you, your brains just melted a little bit because you went, wait a minute, we're dividing and getting a bigger number? Yes. When we divide by a fraction, we are going to sometimes get, or if we're dividing a whole number by a fraction, we are usually going to get a bigger number. Because we're dividing my whole number up into smaller pieces. So if we take something and cut it up into smaller pieces, we're going to end up with more of that thing. Okay? So this is the picture version of this. All right? Let me show you the math part of it now, which I'm going to be honest with you, I think is a little easier to do. Again, this is kind of a weird thing to think about, especially when you first get into it, but let me show you the math. So what we do on this, looking at my 3 divided by 1/3, what we do, and this is where it gets a little strange, but once you can remember to do this, these problems are pretty easy, is what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my fraction, whatever I'm dividing by. I'm going to flip it. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite my problem as 3. Let me write that a little bigger so you guys can see. 3. And then I'm going to flip this to 3 over 1. And because I flipped it, I'm going to change my division to multiplication. Now this should look familiar because this is what we've been doing for the last couple of days. Remember, this 3 is a 3 over 1, and then I'm just going to multiply across. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, and I'm going to end up with 9 over 1, which is 9 wholes. All right? Now, again, once we get to here, you guys are going to be golden. It's just remembering to flip my fraction, or let me back up. To flip whatever I am dividing by. Okay, because in a minute we're gonna switch it up a little bit, and we're gonna have a fraction divided by a whole number. So I want to make sure there's no confusion here. We're not flipping the fraction necessarily. We're flipping whatever we're dividing by. Okay, and why don't you go ahead and circle this and write the word flip on it. Just write the word flip. And if you want to do that, or maybe at the top of your paper in that column, because those are all those numbers that we're dividing by are pretty well lined up, just the top, write flip. Or if you want to go through every single one, like number 2, if you want to circle the 5 and write flip. Number 3, you want to circle the 4 and write flip. That's fine. Just to remind you, okay? So this is what we're doing. Now again, if this is stressing you out, don't let it, because once we get to here, you guys are good. You know exactly how to do this. You've been doing a great job multiplying fractions. So once we get to here, don't freak out. Okay? Because we're good. All we're really changing on this is this flipping thing. Okay? All right, let's go on to number 2. If the teacher in the room, if you need to pause the video so they can look at this, then you're welcome to do that at any point. All right, so number 2 is a little different because I'm starting with a fraction and then I'm dividing it by a whole number. Okay? So this really is 1/2 divided by, it's kind of like this. This is kind of what's going on here. That's weird because 1/2 is smaller than 5. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's look at a picture to see exactly what's going on here. Okay, so I'm going to do a bar because I think that'll be easier. So I've got this bar here. Okay, I've got this bar, and I'm going to separate my bar into 1/2. So this represents just one whole, and I've got this, and this is going to represent 1/2. Okay, so here's my 1/2. Now what this problem is saying is I'm going to divide this 1/2 piece, and I don't really want to shade it in because I want you to be able to see the lines. But I'm going to divide this 1/2 piece by 5. So I'm going to separate this 1/2 piece into 5 pieces. All right, that's what this problem is telling me to do. I've got 1/2, and I'm going to divide it by 5. So I'm going to take this 1/2 and cut it into 5 pieces. Okay? So I'm just going to do that now with my picture. My pieces are not exactly even. I don't like that. I'm going to redo it. Alright, so let's see if I can draw this a little bit better. Have these be a little more even. That's a little closer. Alright, so now I've divided, I've separated my 1/2 into 5 pieces. So what is the value of each of these pieces? I don't know. Well, let's think about it for a second, okay? We've got 1/2 here, and we've separated that 1/2 into 5 smaller pieces. How are we going to figure this out? Well, let me show you the math, and then we'll come back and see if this makes sense. Okay? Alright, so 1/2 divided by 5. Now, just like last time, I'm going to, remember this is 5/1. I'm going to, because it's what I'm dividing by, I'm going to flip it. Alright, so I'm going to end up with 1/2. Remember, since I flipped it, I'm now going to multiply 1/2 times 1/5. Alright, again, we're flipping whatever we're dividing by, and then we're changing it to multiplication. So I end up with 1/2 times 1/5. Now we've been doing this. Now I'm like, wait, a fraction times a fraction, I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do. Because that's what we've been doing. Alright, the only difference is instead of this being a whole number where we just put a 1 on the bottom, now it's an actual fraction, but I do the same thing. I multiply the numerators, and I multiply the denominators. I do the same thing that I've done. So 1 times 1 gives me 1, and 2 times 5 gives me 10. Now let's compare what we got with our model to see if it makes sense. 1/10. So each of these pieces are 1/10. Well, I don't know. Well, let's look at our top half for a second. If we separated our top half into fifths, or excuse me, yeah, into 5 pieces. So we've got, just so we keep them separate here, this is what we started with. We divided it by 5, so we separated it into 5 pieces. All right. I did it at the top here just so we could see how much each of these pieces are worth. So let's count our pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Which means each one of these pieces would be equal to 1/10. All right. Now again, and I said this earlier, for me the model is actually more confusing than the math. The math, once you remember, hey, I'm dividing, okay, so I got to flip the second number and then just multiply them out. To me, that's pretty easy. The model, to me, confuses me sometimes. All right, I want you to see the model, because you're going to see the model on at least one question on CBA. So I want you to see the model, but we're mainly going to focus on the math part of it, because you're going to see lots of those questions. You're going to see at least 3 questions in the CBA where it's just the math problem. Okay? So, again, remember, whatever we're dividing by, we're going to flip it, and then we're just going to multiply out. Okay? Don't stress. We're going to do a few more of these before I let you loose on your own. Some of you are probably already rocking and rolling. You're just flipping and multiplying, flipping and multiplying, flipping and multiplying. All right, let's go on to, let's go ahead and do number 3. All right, so number 3, we've got 8/10 divided by 4. Now, I'm not going to do a picture model on this because, man, it would get really yucky and messy. And especially when your numbers get bigger, the models get a lot harder to mess with. So we're just going to do this with the math. All right, so remember, this is 4 over 1. I want to make sure I'm doing that. I'm going to go ahead and circle the division and the 4 over 1 just to remind me. I'm going to right flip. This is a good thing for you guys to do, especially on these practice problems, just to get you, okay, it's division, I'm flipping, it's division, I'm flipping, it's division, I'm flipping. All right, so we're going to flip it. So we'll end up with 8/10. Remember, since we flipped it, now we're multiplying. 8/10 times 1/4. Okay? Again, I know technically speaking we haven't done fraction by fraction, but you actually have been for the last 2 days, and you've been doing great with it. So we're going to multiply my numerators, and we're going to multiply my denominators, and we're going to get 8 over 40. All right. Now, I know the afternoon group, you guys watched a video, I believe, yesterday on simplifying and reducing and finding the simplest equivalent. This is an answer that you can and should do that on. Okay? If you're in the morning group, we haven't talked about it yet, so don't stress. When you look on your key, it should have this number, and then it's going to give you the equivalent or the simplest form. Okay, so you can go ahead and write that, but make sure you get to this point. And this will be on the key. It'll just have one other number next to it, and that's what that is. All right, and if you can do it, great, but we'll talk about that when I get back because I want to work on that with you guys because it's a little bit harder to do. Okay? Good? All right, let's do number 7. Let's do number 7. Skipping around just a little bit, but I want to make sure I get plenty. We're taking a whole number and dividing by a fraction, and we're taking a fraction divided by a whole number. I want to make sure I get plenty of both. All right, so let's do number 6. Let's do number 6. So number 6 is 7 divided by 1/2. Okay? So, again, I've got 7 wholes. I've got 7 wholes, and I'm dividing those 7 wholes into 1/2 pieces. So how many pieces do I have now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I should get, as an answer, I should get 14 wholes. Alright, so let's rewrite and flip. Remember, this is 7 over 1. So multiply my numerators, multiply my denominators. I get 14 over 1, which is 14. Alright, I went a little faster on that one. So if the teacher in the room needs to rewind it or pause it, or that's fine. I don't want this video to be over 20 minutes, and we're getting real close. So, all right, let's do 2 more. All right, let's go ahead and do number 7 now. So number 7 is 4 divided by 4/5. Okay. I'm going to flip it because I'm dividing. So that's going to end up being 4 times 5/4. So remember, this is 4 over 1. Multiplying my numerators, multiplying my denominators, and I'm going to get 20 over 4. Now, all the classes we have worked on changing an improper fraction into a mixed number. Okay, so I know everybody knows how to do this. So we can do this. So knock it on its side. 20 divided by 4 gives me 5. So my final answer would be 5. And again, I could draw a model for this, but it's going to look, for me, when the numbers get bigger, the models get very confusing. So I don't want to confuse you by this. I really want to focus on just the math part of it, just the computation part. Okay. All right, let's do one more. Let's do number 8. Number 8 is 8/10 divided by 8. Okay. Now for this, I am going to do the model, but again, the model for me gets confusing. Now, you know what? I'm not going to do the model because that's going to be too many lines. The model would look something like this. And then here's our 8/10. And then we're going to divide each of these tenths by 8. Alright, so again, it would end up being lots of lines. So I'm not going to do the model on this one. Okay, so let's remember to flip it. So this is going to, remember this is 8 over 1. So we end up being 8/10 times 1 over 8. Multiply my numerators, multiply my denominators. So I get 8 over 80. All right. Now again, morning group, once you get to this point, you're okay. All right, the key is going to have this on there, but then there's going to be another number next to it. All right, if you can see the how those two are connected, that's fine. It's great. Afternoon group, I fully expect you to find the least common, or excuse me, find the simplest equivalent, or simplify or reduce. Okay. So this one, yeah, I'm going to let you guys do that on your own. Okay. All right, this instructional video will be up on YouTube, so you can go back and view it. Again, if you guys have major questions on this, we can talk about it tomorrow. But just remember, flip it and then multiply it out. And you've done this for the last 2 days. Okay? Just remember, flip whatever we're dividing by. All right, you guys have a great day.